In the last episode, we cleared the rest of the dungeon pool and learnt the true meaning of healer affix. And with all keys now done at a +2, it's time to up the difficulty and really test ourselves as a healer. I'm getting more comfortable on the priest, but there's 2 different playstyles I want to master before the challenge is over, and LFR doesn't quite cut it. So it's time to up my game. My goals for this episode are to increase the key level and jump into a normal raid to see if I can handle more than just LFR. We start this week with an item level of 601, and our total score so far is 1,418 after 8 runs. I completed all of the weeklies, cleared LFR, then sat down to open all of the caches. From LFR, we picked up some boots with crit verse and avoidance, a ring with crit and haste, and some wrists with crit and haste. From all of the caches, we received a rune dope trinket, and yes, that's actually what it's called apparently. Champion legs with verse and crit, champion boots with haste and mastery, a veteran ring with haste and mastery, veteran wrists with crit and haste, a hero offhand with crit and haste, and a champion staff with crit and verse. Now, due to my other plans for today, this makes decision making even harder, as this week was the week I wanted to get my embellishments. So I planned on getting a staff with ascension, and something like wrists and boots with the banding to double the effect. But first, let's see what we get from the vault. And from this week's vault, we have the choices of veteran wrists with haste and mastery, a veteran back with crit and mastery, a veteran head with crit and haste, champion hands with crit and mastery, a champion ring with crit and mastery, veteran tier hands with crit and verse, a veteran waist with crit and mastery, and a veteran trinket that didn't really look very appealing. And I already have some pretty decent trinkets now. So in the end, I went with champion hands, which I could then convert into tier, which would boost my overall versatility quite a bit, as I was lacking quite a lot for Mythic Plus. Next, I had the task of deciding which slots to get crafted. This took me forever to decide. But in the end, even though I just received a hero offhand from one of the weeklies, I still chose to go with the staff with ascension as planned. The second slot I decided to get crafted was my wrists. But before we get those, I decided to do something that was mentioned in the comments a bunch of times. I wasn't actually going to do this at first, then I thought, meh, it doesn't really affect the challenge, so why not? And that was to complete the story mode scenario to obtain a free enchanted rune crest. This involves completing the story on one character, which I've not actually done on the priest. But as it doesn't affect the overall difficulty of the challenge itself, and all it does is really speed up the gearing process, I was fine with this. So I did just that. I found a crafter for the staff, but didn't realize I had 0 rune crests at this point. So the second piece I decided to get crafted had to be 590. As this was more of a downgrade, I decided to get a belt crafted instead. It's fine. It will be upgraded in no time and would probably be a priority. But for now, it's perfectly fine. I enchanted my gear, upgraded everything I could, and it was time once again to jump in to some Mythic Plus. But before we get started, I do stream on both Twitch and YouTube, where I'll be playing the priest when this challenge is over. We run weekly viewer keys and a weekly raid. No prior experience required, everyone's welcome. Check the Discord to find out more. Alright then, it's time to up my game and smash through some dungeons. And to begin with, I just wanted to address a couple of comments from the previous video. Firstly, to those asking how I had double vault, well, I derped and didn't loot the vault in the first episode, so it basically stays there and I can't open future vaults until that one's been opened. This obviously caused some confusion, as many were unaware that you could actually stack vaults. I'm not exactly sure how many this goes up to, but yeah, that's why I had 2 last week. Secondly, a few comments said I was wasting time with +2s because it didn't give me hero track in the vault. Yep, I was fully aware of this and it was intentional. You're absolutely right, it doesn't, but as I'm new to healing on the priest and I'm filled with anxiety, I'm in no rush to completely min-max everything. We'll get there in the end, but up to now, +2s were just fine for me. However, not this week, because we're gonna push a little higher today. I wasn't so bothered about score when looking for keys this week, though I was incredibly anxious about signing to keys in general. I did start signing to keys, and I found myself in a Stonevault +4. And being a +4 means we have an additional fix today, and that is Fortified. Most of you probably know what Fortified is, but to those that don't, it basically means that non-boss enemies have 20% extra health and deal up to 20% increased damage. So certain trash packs today are gonna be pretty brutal. For this key, we had a Prop Paladin, Marksman Hunter, and a Destro and Demo Warlock. And I didn't actually realize it was Fortified at this point, so you can probably imagine my horror right now as the AoE comes out and I'm a little unprepared. It's probably going to be the theme of this entire series. No one died, but the tank did use their lay on hands. First pack lay on hands, that was a little embarrassing. This week's affix is Voidbound. A Void Emissary appears every 75 seconds, buffing enemies by 5% for 3 seconds. It has a pretty large shield and players must focus and kill the Void as soon as possible. When you kill the Void, all players receive 20% crit chance for 20 seconds. Sounds simple enough, but trust me, this can get out of hand pretty fast if ignored. The first boss was scary going into it, but easy enough to handle and I absolutely smashed the Dispelling. And the Dungeon Weak Aura pack really helps with the countdown for this mechanic in particular, once you get used to it. Throughout the entire dungeon, the DPS kept taking a lot of avoidable damage where frontals came out and they just stood there. I missed quite a few opportunities to grip people. Interrupts weren't terrible. Most of the important casts were being interrupted at least, so no complaints there. The second boss could have been hairy, but I actually used my cooldowns correctly for once, and I consumed a few orbs. Nice to see some progress. The third boss could have been a lot worse also, as the AoE on that fight scared the poop out of me when it went off. I handled it well enough, but there were things I could have done better. Oh, and check this out. I can use my utility too. And we had 0 deaths as we started making our way to the last boss. I wonder how many we'll have by the time we get there. I eventually get hit by one of them, I couldn't heal the group, and I started right-clicking in a complete panic. The Warlock then takes a second one to the face in exactly the same spot as last time. Don't these guys learn their lesson? I get back to the group, and the tank apologizes for the pull, thinking it was too big. It was actually okay, but everyone's positioning was pretty poor, and we all failed from moving from the charge mechanic, ending in death. That's completely on us, not the tank. But then we start the last boss. And one thing I want to say on this one, please let the healer clear their debuff first. If the healer struggles to clear theirs and they're trying to position, heal themselves and everyone else, it makes their life so much harder than it needs to be. And remember, if the healer dies, no more healing for you. I cleared the first one and then this happened. It'd probably be better if you just got hit by the frontal. Oh, never mind. These guys didn't make it easy for me, and I really struggled at times. Massive props to the tank though. The amount of healing they were putting out on that fight really helped, and I was super grateful. It would have been so much worse without it, and because of how they played throughout the entire dungeon, I'll just assume that they kept their debuff for the entire fight to help make life easier for everyone else in clearing theirs. We did lose one of the Warlocks. I nearly went down towards the end. Then, at the last second, I thought we were going to lose the tank, and I panic. Pressing every button known to man, I give the tank PI and Guardian Angel, just to make sure, right? So, we do end up timing this key. We gained 32 score, and this took our total up to 1,450. We also looted a champion chest from the cache. That run was, yeah. I quite liked the tank, though. The next key I got into was a City of Threads +4. Not quite sure why I'm punishing myself. These are some of the harder keys, right? This one also included a Prop Paladin, a Destro Warlock, Havoc Demon Hunter, and an Elemental Shaman. There were early signs of trouble when a couple of players failed to move from the frontals. Oh boy. I tried dispelling the orbs to begin with, but felt it was just easier letting them expire instead. So that's what I did. Oh, and I finally made myself a cancel macro for Guardian Spirit, by the way. Let's see if I get to put that to use. We started the first boss, and the tank didn't move from the frontal. Then, as we're due to start moving, 2 party members go offline. I got to use the new macro at least. A bit sooner than I hoped. There were some very questionable moments with the orbs. Stupid demon hunters. And then we had players failing to move. But we took this guy down and we moved on. The second boss wasn't as good as the last time we were here, but this went just fine. The tank took a beating on the trash after though. I remember one of my tanks talking about a nasty debuff that you get from one of these guys. So I was prepared and I used Guardian Angel correctly. I don't think it had an impact though. And I just love how everyone runs off with the nasty poison debuff that I can't do anything about. And obviously I'm trying to heal and they run off and I can't heal through walls, man. Everything was fine leading up to the third boss, and this guy went down just fine too. Though they started the boss when I had 40% mana, and I went with 50% left to go. That wasn't ideal. Focus could have been so much better on the trash before the last boss. I stood with most of the group hoping Cleave and AoE would take care of these pretty fast. I was wrong. I just made it out of the AoE ability. Unfortunately, the Warlock didn't. We started the last boss, the Shaman pressed their cooldowns, so I gave them PI and oof. I think they hit a little too hard, because they then had to run away and kite the boss. Once again, it felt like the roots were being ignored, and I took an orb to the face. Thankfully, I didn't die. These really have to be cleared. But that was pretty much the fight. We end up timing this key, gaining 33 score, and taking our total to 1,483. No loot from this one. I was a little picky with the next group I signed for, looking for players around my score. I also wanted to experience healing something different and not just the flavour of the month prop paladin. And the key I got invited to was a Siege of Boralus +4, this time healing a Guardian Druid. They took their sweet time inviting DPS, and we ended up with a Pumper Assassin Rogue, an Outlaw Rogue, and an Arcane Mage. This felt so much smoother from the get-go, and the Guardian Druid pulled pretty big where they could. I'll take this as a compliment. They obviously trust their healer, right? Trash went fine up to the first boss, and the first boss itself went really well too. I got fixated by the boss this time and handled it like a champ. There's honestly not a great deal to talk about with this dungeon. It was all pretty smooth from start to finish. I was using my cooldowns effectively, the group didn't take a butt ton of avoidable damage for once, and I handled AoE healing so much better. That felt pretty great. The Druid wasn't particularly happy when they were asking for Bloodlust on the third boss, which the Mage failed to provide. I forget this all the time too, don't worry. The last boss was a little awkward at times. I wanted to position myself to get these epic grips. Though sadly I've been too occupied today with everything else going on, and I've missed so many opportunities. A really great run overall, only one death and nothing I could really do about it, to be honest. It nearly took me too, but I was prepared going into it and I knew exactly what I was going to press when damage started coming out. It was close though, so we did in fact +2 that key, picked up 36 score, and that takes our total rating to 1,519. And we got no loot from this one either. And the Druid's at it again, suggesting the Mage uses their lust in Donegal. I will admit, I found this pretty funny. I decided that was enough keys for 1 week as I was running out of time. I wanted to practice the other half of this challenge and test myself in a raiding environment. Plus, it'd help with loot, valor stones and crests. I got into a normal run and I was up against another holy priest with exactly the same item level as me and 2 resto shamans that were around 610 to 615 item level. I was also testing out a different build this week, similar to Mythic Plus with the weaving, but this one built for raid, which I assume is less focused on AoE and more targeted. But it really didn't work out too well, as there wasn't a great deal to heal for the majority of the raid. We smashed through all of it in no time, obviously picking up 0 loot, and I walked out feeling like I'd just done LFR. That's honestly how it felt. I guess I can jump into heroic then, but not just yet. Alright, so I lied. As much as I really didn't have time for one more key, I wanted that second hero slot in the vault. So I signed up to a few keys and felt adventurous. And I got invited to a Mists of Tirna Scithe +5. This run started off great when the Warlock stood afar, taking all of the Spikeclaw jumps to the face. I'm pretty sure I wasn't healing that, but then we had another moment after the first bit of trash where I assumed the group were either on Discord or just pinging, hoping that the Warlock knew what was being asked of them. We stood here for close to a minute, by the way. No gateway was used to skip these mobs, so me and the tank started running round the normal way. Though instead of waiting for the rest of the group, the tank decided to continue without them. I turned my back to soothe the trash. I completely tunneled, not paying attention to the tank. They go splat without using any defensives or mitigation, and the rest of the group are then fighting for their lives. This of course doesn't end well. We regroup and take these guys down. I unlock the room to get the stat buff. The group proceeds towards the 2 big ads. And you want to see what happens when both of these reach 50% and your healer forgets about the AoE? Well, enjoy this bit then. The first boss was fine. I wouldn't pop Bloodlust right at the beginning though. The maze was just fine too, mostly anyway. I had no time to solve puzzles though. Luckily, it seems someone had an add-on or weaker. They pretty much did all of it for us. The second boss. Well, it started okay. Things were going fine, but towards the end, it seems the tank forgot about the interrupt mechanic that only they can deal with. Man, that was tense. Phew. After that boss, we take down the first bit of trash. The Evoker decides to rescue me away from the dying Warlock, and it's fair to say I wasn't impressed by that, especially when the affix came out, then fixated on me. We move on to the next lot of trash, and
It was at this moment that he knew he flirped up.
oh man, what an opportunity that would have been. This of course leads to a wipe. We get to the final boss with 16 deaths, 25 seconds remaining, and we still need 10% count. This boss goes down just fine. We finished the trash, overtimed this key by nearly 4 minutes, gained 32 score, which takes our total up to 1,551, and we ended up looting a champion staff from the chest. Well, I kinda failed with my grips this week, and unfortunately we don't have enough to cover Grip of the Week. However, as it was one of those weeks, and we had plenty of memorable moments, I think we'll spice it up today. So sit back and enjoy Derp of the Week. We got more than usual today as I'm spicing it up, and the first one comes from the normal raid, which wasn't shown in the normal portion of the video. Yeah, that's right, back at it again with Rashi. I get webbed and moved to the side, bringing a friend with me. Yeah, I know, nothing special, but it's what happens after. This never gets old. If only I saved my grip for like 5 more seconds. Then we have the first run of the day in Stonevault, where we see a chain of deaths in exactly the same spot. Then I get sniped, become incredibly flustered and panic. I forget how to function altogether, and just start spamming every button on my mouse. What a derp. Up next, we have that hectic moment of pure panic as the tank dies and the rogue is bobbing and weaving, trying their very best to stay alive. What a situation that was. But if that's not enough, the poor tank's at it again as they take a trip into the abyss. I'm still mad at myself for missing that grip. What a moment that could have been. But without a doubt, for me at least, Derp of the Week goes to the Hunter, who clears their debuff in style. I'm sure Hunter mains would be proud of that one.